Welcome to the Bovine Podcast. I'm Bella, your agricultural journalist turned podcast host, and today we're diving into what might be the most significant disruption to hit the dairy industry since the mechanical milker. Lab-grown milk is no longer science fiction, folks. Boston-based Brown Foods has created real cow's milk without a single cow, and it's been validated by MIT. Douglas, this sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie, doesn't it?
It certainly does, Bella, but it's very real. I've been in dairy farming for 30 years, and I've seen a lot of changes, but nothing quite like this. Today, we're unpacking everything dairy producers need to know about Brown Foods' Unreal Milk, what it is, how it's made, and most importantly, what it means for your operation. We'll discuss the science behind this breakthrough, its environmental claims, market timeline, and practical strategies for dairy farmers to adapt and potentially benefit from this technology.
So Douglas, let's start with the basics. When I first heard lab-grown milk, I immediately thought of another plant-based alternative like oat or almond milk. But that's not what we're talking about here, is it?
Not at all, Bella. That's a common misconception. What makes Brown Foods' Unreal Milk revolutionary is that it's not plant-based. It's actual dairy, molecularly identical to what comes from a cow. They've managed to produce genuine dairy proteins, fats, and carbohydrates that comprise 99% of conventional cow milk. The key difference? No cows are involved in the production process.
That's fascinating. Can you explain how they actually make this milk without cows? I'm trying to picture what this process looks like.
At its core, they're using what's called mammalian cell culture technology. They take milk-producing cells, the same type that produce milk in cows, and grow them in bioreactors, which are essentially specialized tanks where cells can grow under controlled conditions. These cells then produce milk components just as they would inside a cow's udder.
And this is different from precision fermentation, right? I remember we did an episode on that technology last year. And this is different from precision fermentation, right? I remember we did an episode on that technology last year.
Excellent point, Bella. Precision fermentation uses yeast or bacteria to produce specific milk proteins in isolation, like Perfect Day making beta-lactoglobulin for ice cream applications. What sets Brown Foods apart is they're using actual mammary cells to produce all milk components together as whole milk. Their approach yields complete milk with the full protein profile: alpha S1 casein, alpha S2 casein, beta casein, kappa casein, alpha lactalbumin, beta-lactoglobulin, lactotransferrin, and albumin, all 8 key proteins found in conventional milk.
That's quite the technological feat. Who's validating these claims? I imagine dairy farmers would be skeptical about whether this is truly equivalent to cow's milk.
Rightfully so. The validation comes from a highly credible source, MIT's Whitehead Institute for Biomedical Research. Dr. Richard Bratz, who is the Edwin R. Gilliland Professor of Chemical Engineering at MIT and a biopharmaceutical manufacturing expert, has confirmed that Brown Foods has achieved a significant scientific and technological breakthrough by producing the world's first test tube of lab-grown milk. His endorsement carries substantial weight in the scientific community.
How long has this been in development? It seems like such advanced technology.
What's remarkable is the timeline. While startups have been attempting to produce fully lab-made whole milk for 6 years, Brown Foods accomplished this in just 3 years. That's extraordinarily fast for cellular agriculture, where decade-long timelines are the norm. And they've secured $2.36 million in seed funding from investors including Y Combinator and Ag Funder to scale the technology.
One of the biggest criticisms of traditional dairy has always been its environmental footprint. What environmental claims is Brown Foods making about their lab-grown milk?
They're making substantial claims, Bella. According to their data, Unreal Milk production uses 82% less carbon, 90% less water, and 95% less land than traditional dairy farming. Those aren't incremental improvements. They're fundamental efficiency leaps that could reshape how we think about sustainable food production.
Those are impressive numbers, but are they verified by independent research?
That's a fair question. The specific numbers for brown foods are company claims, though they align with broader research in cellular agriculture. For context, Perfect Day, another company in this space, commissioned a report showing their lab-grown process produces 91 to 97% less greenhouse gas emissions and uses up to 99% less blue water compared to traditional dairy. The Nicholas Institute for Environmental Policy Solutions at Duke University has also studied cultured casein production, finding significant potential environmental benefits, though the range of impact varies widely depending on production methods. 1.
Environmental benefits aside, let's talk market potential. How big could this get, and how quickly?
The numbers are substantial. The global precision fermentation market is projected to reach $34.8 billion by 2031, growing at an explosive 40.5% annual rate. The broader dairy alternatives market is expected to grow from $31.13 billion in 2023 to $70.6 billion by 2031. Brown Foods itself is targeting consumer tastings of Unreal Milk version 2.0 by late 2025, followed by a market pilot in late 2026.
That's only about a year and a half away for initial tastings. Are consumers actually ready for lab-grown dairy products?
The research shows a significant generational divide. According to recent data, 39% of Americans already find precision fermented dairy appealing. When broken down by age, 36% of millennials and 32% of Gen Z show interest, compared to just 21% of baby boomers. This suggests that as younger consumers gain more purchasing power, the market acceptance of lab-grown dairy could accelerate.
So it sounds like we're looking at a gradual shift rather than an overnight revolution. What's the current state of the technology? Is it ready for commercial scale?
Not quite yet. The current version still requires extraction from a liquid growth solution, with some of that solution remaining in the final product, a challenge they're working to eliminate in version 2.0. There are also significant hurdles in scaling production and reducing costs. Current production scales are minuscule compared to commercial dairy operations, and costs remain prohibitive for mass market applications.
I can imagine many of our listeners are wondering how quickly this could impact their milk checks. What's your assessment, Douglas?
The mainstream fluid milk market likely has years before feeling significant pressure. The first battlegrounds will be high-value ingredients like specialized proteins used in food manufacturing and premium specialty products with environmental credentials that drive higher pricing. This gives conventional producers time to adapt, but ignoring this technology would be dangerous business thinking.
Let's get to what's probably top of mind for most of our listeners. How will this impact dairy farmers' livelihoods? Is this an existential threat, or could there be opportunities here?
It's both a threat and an opportunity, Bella. The threat is clear. A technology that potentially produces dairy components without cows could eventually reduce demand for conventional dairy, particularly in sustainability-focused markets. But forward-thinking farmers aren't just watching this happen. Many are already finding ways to adapt and even benefit.
What kind of adaptation strategies are you seeing? Are there examples of dairy farmers who are already responding to this trend?
Absolutely. I'm seeing 4 main approaches. First, some farms are exploring hybrid models. Take Germany's Sonara, which partners with dairy farms to culture mammary cells, combining traditional farm expertise with lab innovation. This cow-to-culture approach lets farmers maintain herds while diversifying. According to one early adopter, Luder Hinrichs, this has resulted in a 15% revenue boost. In his words, "We're still milking cows, but now we're also growing cells."
That's fascinating. What other approaches are you seeing?
A second approach is land leasing for bioreactors. Green Valley Dairy in Wisconsin is a prime example. They're now dedicating 10% of their land to a brown foods pilot facility, creating a secondary income stream. The owner, Greg Strauss, describes it as like renting out a corner of your farm, but for science.
So these farmers are finding ways to participate in the new technology rather than just competing with it. What else?
A third approach is institutional partnerships. The Dutch dairy cooperative Friesland Campina invested €2 million in 2024 to research cellular agriculture partnerships. Their CEO, Jan Dirk van Karnebeek, put it well when he said, "We're blending 150 years of farming tradition with tomorrow's tech to stay relevant."
These all involve embracing the new technology in some way. Are there strategies for farmers who want to stay focused on traditional dairy production?
Absolutely. The fourth approach is sustainability differentiation. As lab-grown alternatives emphasize their environmental benefits, some conventional producers are countering with their own sustainability credentials. Strauss Family Creamery in California, for instance, achieved carbon neutrality and saw a 20% sales increase after highlighting this distinction. Farms that adopt methane digesters, regenerative practices, or other sustainability measures can market their milk as a premium, authentic alternative that also addresses environmental concerns.
I imagine animal welfare standards and regional specialization would also be differentiators that lab production can't easily match. What challenges does lab grown dairy still need to overcome before it becomes a mainstream reality?
There are several significant hurdles. First is cost. Current production methods are prohibitively expensive for mass market applications, though AI-driven optimization could eventually reduce expenses. Second is scaling. Moving from laboratory quantities to commercial volumes requires solving complex bioengineering challenges. And third is the extraction process. Separating the milk components from growth media efficiently remains difficult.
What about regulation? I imagine there must be considerable regulatory hurdles for a product like this.
You're absolutely right. The regulatory landscape is still developing. In 2023, the National Milk Producers Federation petitioned the FDA to restrict terms like milk to animal-derived products. The FDA and USDA jointly oversee cellular agriculture, requiring rigorous safety reviews. These regulatory processes could accelerate or delay commercial timelines significantly.
I'm also wondering about intellectual property. If lab milk uses genetic material derived from cows, do dairy farmers have any stake in this?
That's an excellent question that Vermont dairy farmer Karen Stahl raised. She asked, "If lab milk uses our cow's genetic material, shouldn't we get a stake in the profits?" This highlights the complex intellectual property questions around genetic resources that the industry and regulators haven't fully addressed.
What about consumer acceptance? Do you think people will actually want to drink milk made in a laboratory?
Consumer acceptance remains a major unknown. A 2024 Sentient Media study found that 42% of U.S. adults are open to cell-cultured dairy, but naturalness concerns persist. Taste, texture, and price parity will be crucial factors. I suspect we'll see early adoption in specialized products like protein ingredients for food manufacturing before fluid milk for direct consumption.
Let's look beyond the immediate future. Where do you see this technology heading in 5 to 10 years?
Beyond dairy alternatives, Brown Foods and similar companies envision producing species-specific milk for niche markets. Imagine camel milk or even human milk for specialized nutrition applications. They're also exploring supplying ingredients to cosmetics and pharmaceuticals. Meanwhile, competitors like Israel's Wilk focused on cultured milk fats and Switzerland's Cultured Hub on biotech scaling are advancing parallel technologies.
Could this actually create new markets that don't exist today?
Absolutely. Just as we've seen plant-based alternatives expand the overall dairy category rather than simply substituting conventional products, lab-grown dairy could create entirely new categories. Imagine dairy products with customized nutritional profiles, hypoallergenic dairy for people with specific sensitivities, or specialized ingredients for medical nutrition.
When I think about the history of agriculture, technological disruptions have always been met with resistance at first, but eventually the industry adapts and often emerges stronger. Do you see that pattern potentially repeating here?
Philosophically does suggest that pattern, Bella. As I often tell farmers I consult with, while your grandfather competed with the dairy farm down the road, your children may compete with bioreactors. The dairy industry has adapted to countless challenges over centuries, from hand milking to mechanical milkers, from local to global markets, from basic nutrition to functional foods. Those who acknowledge new realities while building on conventional dairy's unique strengths will be best positioned for whatever comes next.
We've covered a lot of ground today. Boston-based Brown Foods has created lab-grown milk containing all 8 key dairy proteins without using cows, validated by MIT's prestigious Whitehead Institute. Their Unreal Milk uses mammalian cell culture technology to produce molecularly identical dairy with significantly reduced environmental impacts compared to traditional farming. While consumer tastings are planned for late 2025 and market entry targeted for 2026, there are still substantial hurdles in scaling production and reducing costs.
For dairy farmers listening today, my advice is simple. Treat this as a call to strategic thinking, not panic. Consider how you might differentiate your operation through sustainability, animal welfare, or regional specialization. Explore whether hybrid models or partnerships with food tech companies might create new revenue streams. Monitor commercial developments closely and engage in regulatory discussions to ensure sensible policies. The global dairy landscape is witnessing its most significant technological disruption in decades, but disruption always creates opportunities for those prepared to adapt.
That brings us to the end of today's episode of the Bullvine Podcast. If you're interested in learning more about lab-grown dairy or adaptation strategies, visit our website at www.thebullvine.com, where we have additional articles on this topic. What are your thoughts on lab-grown milk? Would you consider trying it or even partnering with companies developing this technology? Let us know in the comments section or send us an email. Remember to subscribe to our podcast and newsletter to stay informed about the latest developments in the dairy industry. Until next time, I'm Bella.
And I'm Douglas. Keep those cows happy and keep your business strategies evolving. See you next time.